So I want to talk about a little bit about how Flutter may has the opportunity to democratize UI development. And what do I mean by that? I mean that we can grow the pool of people who can write user interfaces, because today it's a super specialized skill set. And like I work in a place, or have worked in places where, we have different independent mobile teams for iOS, a different mobile team for Android, with different web teams. We've got different reporting teams. We've got basically every technology has its own pool of people. And so if we want to release something across multiple channels, iOS, native, Android, native, and web, we end up with 3 different pools of people doing that. And in my mind, Flutter does a couple things. Flutter gives you the opportunity. And if you look at those, right, we end up with a bunch of specialists, right? For iOS and Android, man, you basically end up with a bunch of people. That's all they do. And for web development, it turns out a high percentage of the people that are good at web development are web specialists. And they may call themselves full stack, but are they, I guess the idea was I was trying to create these circles of specialization. And what I was trying to show here is that on the iOS, Android, and web side, you basically end up with a bunch of specialists, and they're only in that slice. And then what we want to be able to do is we want to be able to increase the number of people in those spaces and increase the number of people that can do more than one thing. And the big pool of developers, I mean, we have these other user interfaces, OS native, and we actually can do that with Flutter too. I'm kind of treating that as separate. We have Jupyter notebooks and other things for data scientists, which is a type of user interface that people build for exploration. And they actually deliver notebooks for others to use. We've got reporting tools. You've got any kind of BI tools and you can end up with specialists, kind of generalists doing that. There's kind of a whole pool of people that can do reporting and generate useful reports. And then we've got low-code environments. And really what I was thinking is we were going to try and drive, and these pie slices are not, population sizes. They're just big enough to be interesting. That we have these non-user interface APIs and data people, a piece of people that basically write a ton of backend code, processing code, batch code, other things. And the notion is that big pool of people, and a lot of those are kind of generalists. They can write all kinds of different things. We have some real specialists. We have what we call full stack people, but I really feel like very few people are full stack. So maybe I should have skipped that whole circle and just done specialist and generalist, but people use the term full stack. I'm not convinced that many people are really good at it. But what we want to be able to take is, the 3/4. It's really probably like 3/4 of the developers are non-UX APIs and data, and they're writing all kinds of other processing. They're writing tools, right? And what we want to be able to do is we want to be able to get more of those people into writing the basic parts of user interfaces, right? And what that means is they need a programming model that looks like their existing programming model. They need tools that work like kind of what their tools work like. And it would be great if the user interface they build could run on the 2 mobile platforms and on web, right? Because that's like the big 3 for where we're putting stuff. And I'm going to argue that Flutter, which is which uses Dart, it's a kind of a Java/C# language. It's got some functional programming aspects to it. It looks like a regular language, and it is not yet another crazy tier built on top of JavaScript, right? And that it has the ability to transmute itself into the different platforms. You can make it OS native, you can do Mac OS, Windows, Linux, and you can do iOS native, Android, and web. And what I'm going to assume for the purpose of this discussion is we're either going to build standalone Flutter native apps, or we're going to build a module for an existing app, but really we're just going to use regular developers to build that, and we might still have some specialists. So this isn't the notion that specialists are going to go away. There will always be iOS native specialists, Android native specialists, and web specialists, and that's for like the super finicky details and understanding how stuff really works. But the argument I'm going to make is if I can write Flutter code, and it's 80% common across web, Android, and iOS, and I can get Java and C# and other developers, I'm going to throw a bone to a friend of mine, Haskell or Rust or one of these others, but they write kind of a general language. That's why I picked Java and C#, very large pool of programmers. If we can get some of those people to be able to build user interfaces, and we only need to build them once, this could cause a rapid change in the rate of user interfaces being built. The real problem we have today is, man, if you're an iOS native person, that's all you do. and you got to hire iOS native people, and nobody builds any UI except for somebody that's iOS native. The same's for Android. The web's a little more popular because there's a lot of frameworks for it, but it's also bitten by a lot of frameworks. So that's what I'm going to argue here, is that Flutter, because of the language it's on, because of the way Google attacked this, and because of the structure they built for this, that people with modicum or very little user interface experience could build a reasonable user interface or add to it and end up with something that looks pretty good, and it runs on Android, iOS, Windows, and the native platforms. And the goal is to make the user interface implementation, the pool of those developers, a lot larger than it is if everybody needs to be a specialist on those teams. Have a great day and leave feedback.